Welcome to the program. Welcome to the show. This is Marc Vlogs Watches, and I am your host, Marc Goldberg. Just bit my tongue a little bit. Guys, before we jump into the meat and potatoes of this video, let's get the quick fist watch check out of the way. And here she is. That's right. Today I am wearing a beautiful, magnificent Rolex Panda. I'm going to tell you where I got it, how I got it. I bought it from an AD. So actually, the topic of this video really is all about the AD, because I feel that the AD is superbly misunderstood by those of us who buy watches. So let's talk about who is the AD, what is the AD, what is their relationship to you, and what's their relationship to Rolex. Let's start with the whole Rolex thing. People talk about I'm angry at Rolex because of this or that, or I went and visited Rolex. Well, unless you were in Geneva, Switzerland, visiting a Rolex factory, you didn't visit Rolex at all. Rolex is a manufacturing company in Switzerland, and you are not the customer of Rolex. I am not a customer of Rolex, even though I'm wearing this one. I didn't buy this from Rolex. Bought this from James & Sons in Orland Park, Illinois, and they, among 4,000 others, according to ChatGPT, among 4,000 others are Rolex authorized dealers. And here's what that means. The manufacturer, Rolex, has distribution contracts with a series of authorized dealers. That's what they're called, the jewelry stores who have the deal, the Rolex contract. And Rolex has a contract to distribute watches through all those ADs. Now, some of them are 1, 2, 3 stores in a family-owned chain, like James & Sons. Others are like Swiss watches. Or Torno. There's dozens. They're corporate and they're owned, and they may own dozens of locations. But nonetheless, I am not a customer of Rolex. I'm a customer of my AD, and that is the same for all of you. Rolex's customers are the AD. We are not. So you have to understand that Rolex, for the consumer of watches, the collector, the enthusiast, Rolex is not a monolith. It's a series of thousands of independently owned or chain corporate owned jewelry stores. Now, one of the things that you have to understand is that means that there are thousands of different policies as to who can buy a Rolex. Yes, Rolex has some influence with their authorized dealers about what the dealer can and can't or should and shouldn't do. Although, believe me, no Rolex AD is going to confirm this for you, because the Rolex distribution contract is incredibly important to any AD who has that contract. And most of them want to be very careful and do things in such a way as to not endanger that contract. But I'm going to tell you that Rolex has indicated to their ADs that they should be selling to local people. Now, that is probably a little negotiable when you get into vacation areas such as Paris, Las Vegas, London. Maybe you don't have to live there to buy a watch. But in most of the hinterlands, if you just happen to be traveling and you walk into an AD, they're going to ask you where you're from, where you live. They're going to ask questions. They're going to look at what's on your wrist. They're going to clock your clock. And if you're not local, chances are they're going to be polite to you, but probably not be able to sell you. So in general, guys, you're going to be a lot better off shopping locally. That's one thing that you should know about the AD. And that is because Rolex doesn't want their ADs shipping watches, for example, in the United States, out of state, preferably, or out of the country. They just prefer that they not do that. They want each AD to sell within their own territory. And by the way, there's a reason for that, and that's not even. This is not even in control of the AD. This comes from on high, from Rolex. The reason is that flippers travel, and Rolex doesn't want the AD very much to be selling to flippers. They want them to sell to known and trusted sources who are really likely to keep the watch. So just understand, if you've been maltreated by an AD, you have not been poorly treated by Rolex. It's just that one store that you went in, and they're all different. There's 4,000 of them. So if you're lucky enough to live in an area with multiples, go visit somebody else. A lot of times people talk about the wait list, and they argue over whether the wait list is a thing, whether it's real. If you go on the wait list, are you really going to get a watch? And so you would probably like it if I could tell you what's the deal with the Rolex wait list. And here's what I'm going to tell you. There are 4,000 different approaches to the Rolex wait list. And I think probably at least 2,000 of those approaches are, yes, yes, sir, we'll take your name, we'll put you in our computer for our dream list, our wish list, our wait list. And then the second you're out of the store, they push the button to delete the file, or if it's on paper, it just gets crumpled up and thrown into the round list. And in some rare cases, that wait list is a real thing, and sooner or later you get the call. Every time I make a video like this, I get comments and I want you to make comments too, of course, but tell me your story. But every time I make a video like this, I get comments that say, oh, this is baloney. I've been on the wait list for 6 years for a simple Submariner. They've never called me back. And then I have other people saying, I walked into the AD, just said, hey, what's up? Just coming to, try on the exhibition only watches, and they sold me one. It can happen either way. This took me 2 to 3 years going on the wait list, but I had buying history with James & Sons, which, I'm not pushing them. If you live in the Chicagoland area, there are other ADs that I have purchased from, including CD Peacock, for example. But I recommend that you stop into these guys and just make yourself known. What I can tell you is the ADs that I have visited and done business with in the Chicago area are really polite and professional, but I have a special fondness for smaller family-owned stores. That's why I keep mentioning James & Sons, because if you go in there 3 or 4 times, eventually you're gonna meet the owner and the manager, and it's just, that gives me a better feeling, and I think it will you as well when you could put a face to the name that's on the door. In corporate, I've purchased from corporate institutions as well, but I think it's just a little bit easier to make relationships with family-owned chains wherever it is you live, because those families tend to not change a lot. So back to the wait list. Is it real? It just depends on the AD. I would say in most cases it's not real. The best way to form a relationship with the AD is to go in there periodically. Don't call them, don't email them, just go in. One of the things that I feel that the AD definitely would like you to know is the following. Absolutely, you have heard correctly that prices are falling on the secondary market for Rolex, and this makes you believe that the AD is swimming in inventory and that you should be able to just walk in there and walk out with a watch. But the AD wants you to know, they don't want you to be disappointed. What they want you to understand is they're still short of inventory. Yes, they are receiving inventory, but the demand for that inventory is so high that they don't have a lot. And what that means is most of the watches that come in, especially the hype watches, almost anything in steel sports, any kind of a GMT, any kind of a Daytona, before that watch even comes into the store, it's already spoken for, because they've got repeat customers, people who they know that they have relationships with, who are waiting on that watch, and they've taken a pre-order, or at least put somebody on a legit wait list. So that does happen, and what that means is, even though the AD is receiving shipments, incoming inventory a couple times a month, a lot of times those watches are already spoken for, and you're going to have to kind of get in line. If you don't have a previous buying history for them, getting in line is not easy. There's a line before the line, and the way you handle that, I think, is to just go in there periodically and talk to the people there. Talk to the sales associate, let them know that you're interested, but that you're patient. I think that goes a really long way, especially if you're local to them. And that's another thing. Although Rolex sends inventory to the ADs on a bi-weekly basis, which is every couple of weeks they're getting a shipment, the AD does not control what's going to be in that shipment. It's not like they call Rolex and say, hey, send me this many subs, send me a couple green ones, send me this many Daytonas. It doesn't work like that. Rolex will send them what Rolex feels like sending them, which means that the AD is, just like you, they have to kind of wait and see what inventory is going to be like. And so they really don't control what's coming in. Now, the AD's relationship with other brands, for example, Omega, I'm told, they have a much likelier chance of being able to contact their Omega representative and ask for specific watches that they want. And then when Omega can, they'll send them. But with Rolex, it doesn't work that way. Rolex sends what Rolex wants to send. My AD forced me to buy extra stuff that I didn't want. So that's what Rolex does, is they make you buy junk that you don't want. Well, that's not true on the blanket basis. Remember, there's 4,000 of these guys, and yes, a lot of them are gonna say, hey, you know, let me get my beak wet, a little something, something for the effort. You know, buy $20,000 worth of diamond junk that you don't want, and then, hey, we could maybe talk about a GMT next time we see you next year. But again, my advice has always been, if the only way you can get a GMT is to buy $20,000 worth of stuff you don't want, go pay $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 over retail and buy it on the secondary market. You know, don't buy stuff that you don't want. However, that being said, let's say you just got engaged and you have a $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 budget for an engagement ring for your fiance. Well, it's fortuitous timing if you want to go spend that at an AD. I think that most people today think that they would be better off buying online from places like Blue Nile, who sells discount diamonds, but I don't think that's true anymore. I think that you will find a really good education and a really good price on a diamond ring at your local family-owned Rolex AD. And if you happen to be buying your watch there and you express interest in Rolex, I think at your average AD, that's going to put you a little bit ahead, actually a lot ahead. And I think that because what they're going to believe is that you are likely to be a generation-long customer of that store, that you'll be back someday or another for anniversary stuff or Valentine's Day, and they're not wrong. Listen, if you had a business, wouldn't you want to please your best repeat customers more than just the occasional one-off? I mean, I do in my business, and you probably do in yours as well. Here's another thing that I think that you really need to understand about the AD. When you went in, did you notice that the Rolex display section was at the front of the store, and that if they sold other brands and other watches, and certainly the other jewelry, was behind that towards the back of the store? Guys, that's not accidental. That's at every single Rolex AD worldwide, and that's because the Rolex contract with the jewelry store stipulates how much square footage will be dedicated to Rolex and where that square footage will be located, and invariably it's at the front of the store. Have you ever noticed that if you bought diamonds or another brand of watch, they sat you down at a desk somewhere in the back of the store, but if you buy a Rolex, you're sitting at the Rolex desk at the front of the store? They cannot deliver anything but Rolex to you at the Rolex desk. It's crazy, but that's the way it is. Rolex is very, very, very controlling. Rolex is the bad boyfriend. You know, he is super controlling about what these guys can sell, where they're going to sell it. If you've ever noticed the tools behind the bench, a lot of those are the ones that touch a Rolex are made by Rolex. They control torque and all kinds of things. So they're told what kind of tools they can use to touch a Rolex. They're not even allowed to put Rolex signage up in that store that Rolex has not approved. And by the time that an AD meets all these requirements, down to, by the way, what percentage of the square footage of the overall store will be dedicated to Rolex. That's going to vary on a case-by-case basis on the one hand. On the other hand, it's huge. Rolex is going to demand the lion's share of the space in the store. And by the time the jewelry store, the AD, accedes to all this stuff and puts it all into effect, they've got an enormous investment in that Rolex relationship. And they certainly don't want to goof it up and do things that will threaten that relationship. Because here's the thing. If you're a Rolex AD, the foot traffic in your store is going to be huge, and most of it's going to be driven by that Rolex relationship. So it's invaluable. It brings people into the store. Do they make money when they sell Rolex? No AD will tell you what their percentage is. I'm going to tell you it's 30, 40%, you know, somewhere in there, depending on the watch. And depending on whether they have to give you a little discount or not these days. And it's probably closer to 35% than it is 30, just my guess. And that's not an inconsiderable amount of money, but when you look at the markups on other forms of jewelry like gold and diamonds, a 30% markup is nothing. So they make, basically, it's not that Rolex is a loss leader, but it gets you into the store. That's a reason why, you know, that grocery stores will have sales on milk or eggs to just get you into the store, even if they don't make much money on that product. Well, I'm there. I'm going to pick up bread and all sorts of other higher margin items. And Rolex does that for jewelers. And the jewelry business is such a capital intensive, high investment sort of business that foot traffic is critical. So ADs really value that relationship with Rolex, and they want to be really careful to meet all their goals and strategies. So guys, I'm going to wrap this up, but a couple quick things. First, thanks for spending all this time. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. You should please subscribe to me and hit the like button and do all that stuff, and tell me about your story in the comments. But I think the most important thing I can tell you is that Rolex is not any one animal. Rolex is a snake with 4,000 different heads. And if you have a bad time at one, don't blame the brand. It's just that store. Go see another store. All right, tell me about your situation, your stories. Let's talk about this again in the comments. This is Goldberg. Peace out.
Paint the sky your favorite